The ship called Horizon Edge moved slowly through the dark space between stars. Captain Katie Morrison stood on the bridge watching the screens in front of her. The scientist Beth Sullivan worked at her station nearby, checking readings that made no sense. Something strange waited ahead in the nebula clouds. Katie had been exploring space for 10 years, but never saw energy patterns like these before. The colors swirled in ways that seemed almost alive. Beth turned to look at Katie with worry in her eyes. They both knew something powerful hid in those clouds. Deep inside the nebula, a massive fortress floated around a dying star. The walls were made of crystal that shone with inner light. Inside the throne room sat Queen Silvara of the Ethel Dore people. She was tall and beautiful with silver hair that flowed like water. Her eyes glowed with ancient sadness and burning anger. Beside her throne rested Vorthanus the dragon. His scales reflected the light of distant galaxies. He was bigger than any Earth building and old beyond counting. The dragon watched the human ship approach through magical viewing pools. Silvara clenched her fists as she watched the vessel. Memories flooded her mind of fire and death. 3,000 years ago, beings who looked like these humans came to her world. They burned the cities and killed her people. Dragons fell from the sky with broken wings. Children cried for parents who would never answer. Silvara escaped with only a few survivors and their dragon guardians. She swore never to let creatures like that threaten anyone again. Now these humans dared to enter the space she protected. Katie sent a message of peace toward the fortress. The words spoke of friendship and learning. Silvara heard the message and her anger grew hotter. How dare they pretend to be kind? The beings who destroyed her world also spoke sweetly before they attacked. She would not be fooled again. Silvara stood from her throne and walked to Vorthanus. She placed her hand on his great head. Through their bond, she shared her command. Vorthanus spread his wings and roared. The sound shook the crystal palace. Energy gathered around the dragon like a storm. He released it toward the human ship. The wave of power hit Horizon. Edge hard. Alarms screamed throughout the vessel. Katie grabbed her chair to stay standing. Systems failed all around the bridge. The engines went dark and silent. Beth frantically tried to restart anything that would work. Nothing responded to her commands. They were trapped and helpless. Katie tried to send another message. She wanted to know what they did wrong, but the communication systems were dead too. On Earth, the military command received the distress signal from Horizon Edge. Admiral Lisa Carver read the reports with a hard face. She called for 7 warships to launch immediately. The Admiral did not believe in waiting when her people were in danger. Katie watched through the windows as the battle group arrived. She wanted to warn them that this was a mistake. The being who attacked them was powerful beyond measure. But she had no way to send messages. Silvara saw the warships and knew she was right about humans. They came with weapons just like the old enemy. She activated the defense platforms that surrounded her territory. Ancient machines came to life after sleeping for centuries. They had one purpose: to destroy any threat. The first human warship fired at the platforms. The platforms fired back with weapons that bent space itself. 2 ships took critical damage and had to retreat. The other ships spread out and kept attacking. Vorthanus flew from the palace into open space. His form grew larger until he seemed as big as a moon. The dragon opened his mouth and breathed power. But this was not normal fire. Where his breath touched the ships, metal aged 1,000 years in seconds. Hull plates crumbled to dust. 3 more ships fled in terror. Admiral Lisa could not believe what she was seeing. Her best warships ran from a single creature. She needed a new plan. Back on Horizon Edge, Katie and Beth worked without rest. They studied every reading they could get from the attack. Beth discovered something important in the data. The energy patterns mixed technology with something else. It looked like the theoretical work on quantum mysticism. Beth searched old records while Katie watched. She found files about an ancient race called the Corrupted Ones. These beings enslaved entire worlds long ago. They looked similar to humans, but were far more cruel. The records said the Ithildore were their victims. Katie understood now. This queen thought humans were the same as her ancient enemy. The anger made sense, even if it was based on a mistake. Katie had to find a way to explain the truth. But how could she reach someone who would not listen? Admiral Lisa made a choice that Katie would have hated. She hired a mercenary named Amy Fletcher. Amy had a reputation for doing whatever it took to win. She brought her squadron and a terrible weapon. Amy planned to use quantum torpedoes that could tear space apart. The explosion would destroy everything in a huge area that included the fortress and also the moons nearby where millions lived. Katie found out about the plan through Beth, who hacked into military channels. Horror filled Katie at the thought of so many deaths. She had to stop this somehow. In her palace, Silvara sat alone in her private chambers. Her handmaiden Lyris brought food, but Silvara did not eat. The young attendant asked if revenge would truly heal the pain. Silvara wanted to say yes, but the word would not come. Vorthanis appeared in her mind through their bond. The dragon showed her images of the human crew on Horizon Edge. They seemed afraid and confused. They did not act like warriors hungry for conquest. Silvara pushed the thoughts away. She could not afford to doubt now. Amy Fletcher set her weapon on a countdown, 60 hours until everything ended. Katie knew she was running out of time. She had to reach the queen before the weapon fired. Beth helped her plan something desperate. They would steal a shuttle and fly directly to the fortress. It was almost certainly a suicide mission. The defense platforms would shoot them down. But doing nothing meant billions would die. Katie prepared the small shuttle in secret. Beth programmed it to broadcast symbols they found in old Ithildore transmissions. These were symbols of peace and honor. Katie hoped they would mean something to the queen. She climbed into the pilot seat. Her hands shook, but her resolve stayed firm. Beth gave her one last look of respect and fear. Katie launched the shuttle toward the Crystal Fortress. Immediately, the defense platforms locked onto her. Energy beams shot through space toward the tiny vessel. Katie dodged and weaved between the attacks. The shuttle shields flickered and sparked. Warning lights filled the small cabin. A beam clipped the shuttle wing. The shields failed completely. Katie was flying defenseless toward certain death. Then a shadow fell over her shuttle. Vorthanis appeared with his jaws open wide. Katie could see down his throat to the energy building there. This was the end. But something made the great dragon pause. He saw the peace symbols glowing on the shuttle hull. He heard Katie broadcasting a simple message over and over. She was not threatening or demanding. She only asked to understand. Vorthanis closed his mouth. His massive claw reached out and gently grabbed the shuttle. He carried Katie through space toward the Crystal Palace. Queen Silvara stood in her throne room waiting. She did not know what to expect when Vorthanis brought this human. The dragon set the shuttle down carefully in the landing bay. Katie climbed out on shaking legs. Guards surrounded her with weapons ready. She raised her hands to show she carried nothing dangerous. They marched her to the throne room. Katie saw Silvara for the first time and was struck by her beauty and sorrow. The queen looked at Katie with eyes full of old pain. Silvara demanded to know why she should spare any human. Katie took a breath and spoke from her heart. She admitted she did not know what humans did to the Ithildore, but she recognized pain when she saw it. She saw it clearly in Silvara now. The words were simple but honest. For just a moment, Silvara felt something shift inside her. Then one of the guards moved with sudden violence. His blade flashed toward Katie, unprotected back. The weapon aimed straight for her heart. Time seemed to slow down. Silvara moved without thinking. Her body reacted. Before her mind understood why, she threw herself between Katie and the blade. The weapon pierced Silvara's shoulder instead. Pain shot through the queen body. She gasped and stumbled. Katie caught her before she could fall. Blood ran down Silvara's arm, staining her silver gown. The other guards grabbed the attacker. Vorthanis roared and the whole palace shook. Katie pressed her hands against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. She shouted for medical supplies. Silvara lay in her recovery chamber while healers worked on her shoulder. The wound was deep, but not fatal. Katie refused to leave her side despite the guards' protests. The captain used her basic medical knowledge to help, however she could. She cleaned the injury and applied pressure to slow the bleeding. The Ethel Dore healers were amazed that an enemy would show such care. Slowly, they began to see Katie differently. Days passed in strange peace. Katie stayed in the palace as both guest and prisoner Silvara recovered her strength. But something had changed. The burning anger that filled her for centuries felt less certain now. She agreed to speak with Katie in private. They sat in a garden filled with plants from the dead homeworld. Silvara began to tell her story. She spoke of Ethel Dore, the beautiful world, where her people lived in harmony with dragons. The cities were built with singing crystal that made music in the wind. Children learned to bond with young dragons, and they grew together. It was a paradise that knew little war or suffering. Then the corrupted ones came from beyond the stars. At first they seemed friendly and curious. They asked to learn about Ethel Dore culture, but it was all lies. One night they attacked without warning. Their weapons turned the singing crystal to dust. Fire rained from the sky, burning everything. Silvara was young then, barely old enough to bond with Vorthanis. She watched her parents die, protecting her escape. Thousands of dragons fell that night. Only a handful of Ethel Dore survived. They fled into deep space and hid for 3,000 years. Katie listened with tears in her eyes. She understood the pain, even though she had not lived it. When Silvara finished, Katie shared her own knowledge. She showed the queen genetic records on a data pad. Modern humans split from the corrupted ones over 1 million years ago. They were distant cousins at best. The corrupted ones went extinct long before humans built their first cities. Katie explained that humans fought their own terrible wars. They knew genocide and hatred, but they also learned slowly to choose better paths. It did not excuse the past, but it offered hope for the future. Silvara studied the genetic data carefully. Her scientist mind understood what it meant. These humans were not the same beings who killed her family. The resemblance was coincidence of evolution. She felt something crack inside her chest. All this anger directed at the wrong people. Vorthanis landed in the garden beside them. The great dragon lowered his head to look at Katie closely. His eyes were older than mountains. Then his voice filled Katie, mind like rolling thunder. He spoke directly to her for the first time. Vorthanis said that dragons were drawn to worthy souls. He sensed purity of purpose in Katie Hart. He apologized for attacking her ship. As a gift, he plucked a scale from his chest. The scale glowed with inner starlight. He gave it to Katie, saying it would protect her ship from harm. Katie held the scale with wonder and gratitude. Meanwhile, on the human warships, trouble was brewing. Admiral Lisa heard that Katie was alive in the alien palace. She did not see it as a rescue. To her, it looked like Katie was working with the enemy. The Admiral sent angry messages demanding Katie return immediately. When Katie refused, Lisa grew more suspicious. Amy Fletcher also refused to stop her weapon countdown. She argued that the alien was too dangerous to trust. Her own family died in an alien raid years before. She would not risk more human lives on hope. Some of the crew disagreed with Amy. Choice. A young engineer named Sophie Grant thought there had to be another way. She started quietly working to sabotage parts of the weapon system. Back in the palace, Silvara faced her own rebellion. General Corinth had served her. For 1,000 years, he was loyal but also rigid. In his thinking, Corinth believed Silvara was compromised by human manipulation. He gathered other military leaders who agreed. They thought their queen had gone soft. One morning, Corinth confronted Silvara in the war room. He said she was betraying the memory of their people. Silvara tried to explain about the genetic evidence. Corinth did not want to hear it. He saw only that she was choosing humans over her own kind. The argument grew heated. Other advisors took sides. The palace divided between those who trusted Silvara and those who followed Corinth. Katie spent her time learning about the Ethel Dore. She walked through memory pools that showed the past. The pools were shallow basins filled with liquid light. When you looked into them, you could see recorded memories. Katie watched the fall of Ethel Dore and wept. She saw the beauty that was lost. She understood why Silvara could not let go of her grief. The queen found Katie sitting by a memory pool with tears on her face. Something about seeing this human cry for Ethel Dore. People touched Silvara deeply. She sat beside Katie in silence. After a long time, Silvara spoke. She said that for 3,000 years she felt alone. Even surrounded by her people, she carried her pain in isolation. No one else seemed to remember the horror as clearly. But now this human from another world understood. Katie took Silvara's hand without thinking. The touch startled them both, but neither pulled away. Over the next days, they talked more openly. Katie told Silvara about Earth wars and mistakes. She spoke of the Holocaust and slavery and all the terrible things humans did to each other. But she also spoke of how people fought to become better, of the ones who stood up against evil even when it cost them everything. Silvara began to see that maybe goodness was not about what species you belonged to. Maybe it was about the choices individuals made. She wanted to believe that, but fear held her back. What if she was wrong? What if trusting Katie led to more death? Then came the day everything fell apart. General Corinth made his move. He seized control of the defense platforms while Silvara met with Katie. The general redirected all the weapons toward human colonies. Thousands of platforms turned as one. They aimed at civilian stations and settlements. Corinth sent a message to both the palace and the human fleet. He gave them 1 hour to surrender, or he would fire. At the same time, Amy Fletcher accelerated her weapon countdown. She moved it from 60 hours to just 12. Her officers tried to stop her, but Amy had loyal followers. They held the bridge at gunpoint. Sophie managed to send a warning message to Beth Sullivan. Beth immediately tried to contact Katie. The communication went through to the palace. Katie and Silvara learned about both threats at once. They stared at each other in horror. Everything they were trying to build was collapsing. Guards loyal to Corinth surrounded them. The general himself appeared with a squad of soldiers. He told Silvara she was relieved of command. She had failed her people by befriending the enemy. Silvara stood tall despite being outnumbered. She told Corinth he was making a terrible mistake. The general did not listen. He ordered his soldiers to take both Silvara and Katie to the detention cells. As they were led away, Vorthanis roared from somewhere in the palace. The dragon sensed his bonded queen in distress. The soldiers tried to restrain him with energy nets, but Vorthanis was far too powerful. He tore through the palace halls. Crystal walls shattered as he passed. The dragon reached the detention level and melted the cell doors. With his breath, Katie and Silvara ran free. Vorthanis told them through the mental bond that they had very little time. Corinth was preparing to fire on the colonies. Amy's weapon would launch in hours. They had to stop both, or billions would die. Silvara made a decision. She climbed onto Vorthanis' back and pulled Katie up behind her. It was the first time a human ever rode a dragon. Katie held tight as Vorthanis launched into space from the palace. The defense platforms tracked their movement, but Vorthanis was too fast. He dodged every shot with grace. They flew toward the central control hub, where Corinth commanded the platforms. Behind them, alarm bells rang throughout the crystal fortress. Soldiers scrambled to pursue ships launched to intercept the dragon. Silvara knew what this meant. She was now fighting against her own people. It broke her heart, but she would not let innocent humans die for Corinth pride. Katie held on to Silvara as they flew. She used her communication device to contact Beth. The signal was weak, but it connected. Katie told Beth to gather anyone on the human fleet who wanted peace. They needed to get to Amy's ship and stop that weapon. Beth said she would try. She had been talking quietly with other officers who disagreed with the plan. Sophie already had a small group ready to act. They just needed Katie to give the word. Katie gave it. Now 2 desperate missions began at once. Silvara and Vorthanis raced toward the defense hub. Katie allies on the human side moved toward Amy flagship. Both groups were vastly outnumbered. Both faced almost certain death. But both chose to try anyway, because some things were worth dying for. Peace was one of them. Vorthanis flew through a storm of weapons fire. Every defense platform in the sector tried to shoot them down. The dragon twisted and rolled, avoiding the deadly beams. Silvara held tight to his neck. Katie pressed against Silvara, back, feeling the queen heartbeat. It was racing with fear and determination. Below them, the control hub grew larger. It was a massive station covered in weapons and shields. General Corinth commanded from inside. Silvara knew the station defenses were nearly impossible to break. But Vorthanis was no ordinary dragon. He gathered power from the stars themselves. His body began to glow brighter. Energy crackled along his scales. Then he released it all at once in a focused beam. The shields of the control hub flickered and failed. Vorthanis crashed through the outer wall into the station. Metal screamed and tore. They landed hard in a corridor. Silvara and Katie jumped off the dragon back. Soldiers appeared from every direction. Silvara fought with grace and speed. Her movements were like a dance. She disarmed opponents without killing them. These were her people. She would not murder them, even now. Katie stayed close, using a stun weapon Silvara gave her. Together, they pushed deeper into the station. Vorthanis could not fit in the narrow halls. He stayed behind, fighting the ships that pursued them. The dragon roared and breathed temporal fire. Ships aged and crumbled to dust, but more kept coming on. Amy flagship. Katie allies made their move. Beth led a small team through the maintenance tunnels. Sophie knew every passage in the ship from her time as engineer. They crawled through tight spaces, avoiding patrols. The weapon was in the cargo bay, heavily guarded. Amy herself stood watch with her most loyal mercenaries. Beth's team reached a ventilation shaft above the bay. They could see the massive quantum torpedo below. It hummed with terrible power. Sophie whispered that she could disable it if they could get close, but Amy would never let them near it. Beth made a hard choice. She dropped down from the shaft directly in front of Amy. The mercenary leader raised her weapon in surprise. Beth held up her empty hands. She asked Amy to please listen. Amy demanded to know why she should. Beth spoke quickly. She told Amy about Katie and what she was doing. She explained that the alien queen was fighting her own people to protect humans. She said that Katie was risking everything for peace. Amy laughed bitterly. She said, peace was a fantasy. Aliens could not be trusted. Her family died because someone trusted when they should not have. Beth felt sympathy for Amy. Pain. She said she was sorry for that loss. But killing billions would not bring Amy family back. It would just create more orphans. More people filled with rage and grief. The cycle would never end. Back on the control hub. Silvara and Katie reached the command center. General Corinth waited for them. He stood tall in his ancient armor behind him. Holographic displays showed the defense platforms. They were seconds away from firing on the colonies. Corinth told Silvara she could still stop this. All she had to do was execute the human kill Katie and prove her loyalty to the Ethel Dore. Then he would stand down. Silvara looked at Katie. Their eyes met. 3 days ago, Silvara would have done it without hesitation. But now she knew Katie was not her enemy. Katie was perhaps the only real friend she had in 3,000 years. Silvara turned back to Corinth. She said no. The general face twisted with anger and sadness. He said she left him no choice. He reached for the firing controls. Silvara moved faster. She tackled him away from the console. They crashed to the floor fighting. Corinth was a skilled warrior. He had trained Silvara when she was young, but she had something he did not. She was fighting for a future, not just revenge for the past. Katie ran to the control console. The interface was in a language she could not read. She frantically tried to make sense of it. Symbols flashed and changed outside. Vorthanis felt a new presence. Something massive was moving toward him. He turned to see a horror from the old wars. Corinth had activated an ancient Athel Dore war construct. It was a mechanical dragon built from dark matter and stolen souls. The thing was an abomination. Dragons bonded with living beings. This construct was animated by the death of dragons. Vorthanis roared in rage. The two titans collided in space. Their battle shook the entire sector. The construct breathed weapons fire. Vorthanis answered with temporal breath. Reality bent and twisted around them. On Amy's ship, Beth still tried to reason with the mercenary leader. Amy's weapon was lowered, but not holstered. She seemed to be actually listening. Sophie took the chance. She dropped from the vent shaft behind Amy. The young engineer sprinted toward the quantum torpedo. Amy spun and fired. The shot missed Sophie by inches. Other mercenaries raised their weapons. Beth's team dropped from the vents to help. A firefight erupted in the cargo bay. Sophie reached the torpedo and started working. Her fingers flew over the controls. She had studied the weapon design for days. She knew where the weak points were, but Amy had built in a failsafe. If Sophie disabled it wrong, the weapon would detonate immediately. Her hands shook as she worked. Katie finally found the right controls on the hub console. She saw the firing sequence counting down. 10 seconds. 9 seconds. She did not know which command would stop it. She pressed what she hoped was the cancel button. The countdown paused. Then alarms screamed. Katie had triggered a security lock. The system now required authorization from both the commander and the Queen. Katie shouted to Silvara. The Queen was still fighting Corinth. She heard Katie call and understood Silvara stopped holding back. She struck Corinth with all her strength. The general fell stunned. Silvara ran to the console. She placed her hand on the bioscanner. The system recognized her. The firing sequence canceled. The defense platforms powered down. Corinth lay on the floor, bleeding from a head wound. He looked at Silvara with betrayal in his eyes. He said she chose humans over her own blood. Silvara knelt beside him. She said no. She chose life over death. She chose hope over hate. That was what their people should stand for. Outside, Vorthanis was losing his fight. The war construct was powered by stolen dragon souls. It had strength beyond nature. Vorthanis took wound after wound. His blood floated in space like stars, but he would not retreat. He could feel Silvara through their bond. She needed time. He would give it to her no matter the cost. The construct latched onto Vorthanis with metal claws. It began to drain his life force. Vorthanis screamed in agony. The sound echoed through space. Silvara felt every moment of his pain. She cried out and fell to her knees. Katie helped her stand. She asked what was wrong. Silvara said Vorthanis was dying. Katie looked at the displays. She saw the battle happening outside. She understood Vorthanis was sacrificing himself for them. On Amy's ship, Sophie finished her work. She stepped back from the torpedo. The device powered down. The countdown stopped with 12 minutes remaining. Amy stared at it in shock. Sophie had actually done it. The weapon was disabled. Beth lowered her stun gun. She told Amy it was over. They could choose peace. Now, Amy's face went through a dozen emotions, anger and grief and relief. Finally, she dropped her weapon. She said she hoped. Katie was right about the aliens because Amy just bet billions of lives on it. Silvara knew what she had to do. She told Katie to take control of the hub, keep Corinth soldiers from restarting the platforms. Then Silvara ran back to where Vorthanis waited. The dragon had squeezed himself into the station entrance. He was dying. She could feel his light fading. Silvara climbed onto his back one more time. She pressed her forehead against his scales. Through their bond, she poured every bit of her strength into him. Vorthanis used that power to break free of the construct. He flew straight at the mechanical abomination. The construct tried to drain him again, but this time, Vorthanis did something different. Instead of fighting the drain, he reversed it. The stolen souls trapped in the construct had been in agony for centuries. Vorthanis offered them release. He absorbed all the corrupted energy into himself. It was like swallowing poison. Dark matter flooded through his body. Vorthanis roared in pain. His beautiful cosmic scales turned black and twisted. Silvara felt every moment through their bond. She screamed with him, but she did not let go. She held on to Vorthanis and poured love and strength into him. The construct collapsed. Without the stolen souls, it was just empty metal. It drifted apart into debris. Vorthanis' wings failed. He began to fall toward the station. Katie saw it happening through the windows. She shouted for emergency crews. The dragon crashed into the landing bay. The impact shook the whole structure. Silvara tumbled off his back. She scrambled to his head. Vorthanis' eyes were dim. His scales were scarred with darkness, but he was alive. Barely Silvara wept and held him. She told him he was the bravest being she ever knew. Vorthanis' voice in her mind was weak. He said he would do it again. She was worth it. All of this was worth it. Katie appeared at Silvara's side. She brought medical teams. They did not know how to treat a dragon, but they tried anyway. Hours passed in tense uncertainty. Finally, Vorthanis' vital signs stabilized. He would live, but he was forever changed. The darkness would never fully leave his scales. Katie sat with Silvara while they waited. The queen looked exhausted. Katie said they stopped both weapons. No one died today. Silvara nodded slowly. Then she did something unexpected. She leaned against Katie's shoulder. The human hesitated, then put an arm around her. Two people from different worlds, united by sacrifice. Outside ships from both sides gathered. They waited to see what would happen next. The war was over, but peace had not yet begun. Word spread quickly through both fleets about what happened. Some celebrated that war was avoided. Others felt angry and betrayed. On Earth, the news reached the High Command. They demanded explanations from Admiral Lisa. The Admiral had no good answers. She had lost control of the situation. Katie became the center of everything. Humans wanted to know why she trusted the alien queen. The Ethildore wanted to know why their queen protected a human. Katie and Silvara decided to address both peoples together. They set up a broadcast from the control hub. Engineers from both sides worked to make it possible. When the time came, they stood before the cameras. Silvara spoke first. She told her people the truth about the genetic evidence. Modern humans were not the corrupted ones. She had been wrong to blame them. Her desire for revenge had blinded her. She asked for forgiveness. Many Ethildori were shocked. Some were angry, but others felt relief. They were tired of hating. Tired of hiding. Katie spoke next. She admitted humans had much to learn. They expanded into space without understanding who lived there. They responded to fear with violence too quickly. She promised to do better. She asked the Ethildore to give humanity a chance. The broadcast ended. Now came the hard part. Actually building peace. Silvara released General Corinth from detention. She did not want to punish him. He acted from loyalty even if he was wrong. Corinth knelt before her. He said he failed as her protector. Silvara lifted him up. She said he protected what he thought was right. That took courage. Now she needed him to be brave in a new way. She needed him to help build bridges instead of walls. Corinth struggled. With this, But he had served Silvara for 1,000 years. He would not abandon her now. Katie faced her own challenges. Admiral Lisa wanted her court-martialed for disobeying orders. Many officers agreed, but others, including Beth and Sophie, spoke in Katie's defense. They said she saved billions of lives that should count for something. Amy Fletcher surprised everyone by also defending Katie. The mercenary said Katie had more guts than the whole fleet combined. She was wrong about the alien threat. Katie proved it. The debate raged for days. Finally, Earth Command made a decision. Katie would not be punished. Instead, she would become the first human ambassador to the Ithildore. It was a promotion and an exile all at once. Katie accepted without hesitation. Meanwhile, Vorthanis slowly recovered in the palace healing chambers. Silvara visited him every day. The darkness in his scales was permanent. He looked different now. Less like living starlight and more like a void, but his eyes still held warmth when he looked at his bonded queen. Other dragons came to see him. They were awed by his sacrifice. Young dragons especially looked at him with wonder. Vorthanis told them that strength was not just about power. Sometimes the bravest thing was choosing mercy. Katie spent time learning Ithildori customs. She wanted to be a good ambassador. Silvara taught her personally. They walked through the crystal gardens. Silvara showed Katie the memory pools. Together they watched moments of joy from before the fall, children playing with young dragons festivals where music filled the air. Simple family dinners. Katie understood that Silvara lost so much more than lives. She lost a whole way of being. The queen showed Katie, the last living crystal flower. It grew in a protected dome. The flower sang softly when wind passed through it. Silvara said it was the only one that survived. She kept it alive for 3,000 years. It reminded her of home. Katie listened to the flower song. It was beautiful and heartbreaking. She asked Silvara what she would do now. The queen said she did not know. For so long, revenge gave her purpose. Now that was gone. She felt lost. Katie understood that feeling. After her mother died, Katie threw herself into space exploration. She ran from grief by staying busy. Maybe she and Silvara were not so different, both running from pain, both needing to learn how to heal. They sat together in silence. The crystal flower sang its lonely song. Finally, Silvara asked Katie why she risked everything. Katie could have stayed safe on her ship. Instead, she flew into danger for a stranger. Katie thought about it. She said that sometimes you see someone in pain and you just know you have to help. It does not matter if they are human or alien. Pain is pain. Loneliness is loneliness. Silvara felt tears on her face. She had cried more in the past week than in 3 millennia. Katie reached out and took her hand. No words were needed over the following weeks. Real work began. Diplomats from Earth arrived. Ithildori leaders agreed to negotiate. They met in a neutral station built quickly for this purpose. The talks were difficult. Both sides had demands. Both sides had fears. Katie and Silvara worked together to bridge the gaps. When Earth demanded access to Ithildore space, Silvara refused. This was her people's sanctuary, but she offered to share star maps of safe routes. When the Ithildore demanded humans leave the sector, Silvara said no. That was too much to ask, but Katie suggested designated zones. Some areas would be Ithildore only, others would be shared. Both sides could agree to that. Slowly, page by page, the Horizon Accords took shape. The treaty designated Silvara territory as fully sovereign. No human ships could enter without permission. In return, the Ithildore would share knowledge. They would help humanity understand the dangers of deep space. Earth also committed resources to search for more Ithildore survivors. There had to be others scattered across the galaxy. Together, they might find them. On the day of the signing ceremony, both fleets gathered, thousands of ships, human and Ithildore. They formed a double spiral in space. It was beautiful. Katie wore formal dress uniform. Silvara wore robes of silver and blue. They stood before The cameras again. This time they signed the treaty together. When it was done, people cheered, not everyone. Some on both sides remained skeptical, but enough believed to make it real. After the ceremony, there was a celebration. Humans and Etheldore mingled awkwardly. They did not know each other's customs. Mistakes were made, but people laughed instead of fighting. Vorthanus appeared at the celebration. He had regained enough strength to fly. His dark, scarred scales made some humans nervous. But children, both human and Etheldore, gathered around him. They asked to touch his scales. Vorthanus lowered his great head. He let them climb on him. The dragon, who had been a weapon of war, became a symbol of hope. Katie watched this with joy. Beth came to stand beside her. The scientists said she was proud of Katie. Katie said she could not have done any of it alone. So many people chose bravery. Beth and Sophie and even Amy. All the ones who refused to give in to fear. Silvara found Katie later in the evening. The queen looked tired but peaceful. She said she wanted to show Katie something. They walked to a private balcony. From there, they could see both the human and Etheldore fleets, two peoples who almost destroyed each other, now flying together in harmony. Silvara said she had been wrong about so much. She thought strength meant never forgiving, never trusting. But Katie showed her different. Real strength was choosing to hope, even when afraid. Katie smiled. She said Silvara taught her things too. How to honor the past without being trapped by it. How to grieve and still move forward. They stood together watching the stars. Two leaders who became friends. The future was uncertain. There would be more challenges. But for now, there was peace. And that was enough. 5 years passed after the signing of the Horizon Accords. The galaxy changed in ways no one predicted. Katie lived permanently on the joint station called New Horizons. It orbited between human and Etheldore space. She managed a team of diplomats from both peoples. Every day brought new challenges, but also new friendships. Silvara visited often. She divided her time between her crystal palace and the station. When she came, Vorthanus always flew beside her ship. The dragon had become famous across known space. His dark, scarred scales told a story everyone knew. Children made drawings of him. Songs were written about his sacrifice. Vorthanus found it amusing. He was just a dragon doing what dragons do, protecting those they love. The search for other Etheldore survivors had found 12 enclaves, small groups scattered across distant systems. Each group thought they were alone. Finding each other was like a miracle. Silvara wept with joy when she met other survivors. Some were friends from her youth. Others were strangers who shared her pain. Together they began to rebuild their culture. Not as it was, but as it could be. Katie helped coordinate the reunification efforts. It was complex work. Each enclave had developed differently over 3,000 years. They had to learn to be one people again. Beth became the lead scientist studying Etheldore technology. The knowledge they shared advanced human understanding by centuries. Faster than light travel became more efficient. Medical treatments improved dramatically. Beth worked closely with an Etheldore named Lyris, the same handmaiden who once served Silvara. Together they published papers that won every major award. Sophie took a different path. She joined the Joint Defense Force. Humans and Etheldore trained together now. Learning to protect each other instead of fighting, Sophie became friends with young Etheldore pilots. They taught her to fly in ways human ships could not. She taught them practical engineering tricks. General Corinth led the Joint Defense Force with Admiral Lisa. It was strange seeing them work together. They had nearly gone to war against each other. Now they planned training exercises as a team. Even Amy Fletcher found her place. She became a security consultant. Her job was finding weaknesses before enemies could exploit them. Amy was good at thinking like an attacker. That made her valuable for defense. She and Katie met sometimes for drinks. They never became close friends, but they respected each Other. On the 5th anniversary of the Accords, a new threat emerged. Long-range sensors detected ships entering the galaxy. The design was unknown, but the energy signatures were familiar. They matched the corrupted ones. Katie felt ice in her veins when she heard Silvara was with her when the report came in. The Queen's face went pale. She whispered that it was impossible. The corrupted ones went extinct, but the sensor data did not lie. Vorthanis confirmed it through his ancient knowledge. These were ships built with corrupted one technology. Either they survived or someone found their ruins. Either way, it was bad. Katie called an emergency council meeting. Leaders from both peoples gathered within hours. The debate was intense. Some wanted to attack immediately. Others said to wait and learn more. Silvara surprised everyone by advocating caution. The old Silvara would have demanded immediate war, but she had changed. She said they needed information before action. Katie agreed. They sent scout ships to observe what they found was disturbing. The ships were not controlled by corrupted ones. They were controlled by machines, artificial intelligence using old technology. The AI had no memory of organic masters. It only knew its programming. Conquer and control. The machines were heading toward inhabited systems. Katie and Silvara knew they had to stop them, but this time they would do it together. The Joint Defense Force mobilized human and Ethel-Dori ships, formed a united fleet. General Corinth and Admiral Lisa commanded from the flagship. They positioned forces along the machine fleet path. The first battle was fierce. The AI ships fought with cold efficiency. They had no fear and no mercy. But the joint fleet had something the machines did not: creativity and cooperation, human tactics combined with Ethel-Dori technology. Vorthanis flew into battle with other dragons. The machines had never fought dragons before. They did not know how to respond to temporal breath weapons. The AI adapted quickly, though. Within hours, they developed countermeasures. The battle turned into a stalemate. Katie worked frantically on the station. There had to be a way to stop the machines without destroying everything. Beth had an idea. She thought they could hack the AI central control, but they needed someone to get close. Very close. Sophie volunteered immediately. She was the best pilot in the joint force. Silvara said she would go too. Katie started to object, but Silvara stopped her. The Queen said this was her responsibility. The corrupted ones were her ancient enemy. Even if these were just machines using their technology, she had to face them. Katie understood. She hugged Silvara tightly. She made the Queen promise to come back. Silvara promised. Sophie flew a small stealth ship. Silvara rode with her. Vorthanis flew escort using his power to hide their approach. They slipped through the battle. Energy beams crossed all around them. Ships exploded on both sides, but they kept going. The AI central ship was massive, a floating city of dark metal. They landed in a maintenance bay. Silvara and Sophie crept through the corridors. Everything was cold and lifeless. No organic beings had walked here in millennia. They found the central processing core. Beth's instructions guided them through the hacking process. It was working. Then alarms screamed. The AI detected them. Machines poured into the room. Combat drones with weapons. Sophie fought them with her military training. Silvara used her ancient skills. But there were too many. A drone fired at Silvara. Sophie threw herself in the way. The beam hit her shoulder. She cried out and fell. Silvara caught her. In that moment, she saw Katie saving her 5 years ago. The same selfless act. Sophie gasped that she was okay. Just finish the hack. Silvara worked frantically. The machines closed in. Then Vorthanis' voice filled her mind. The dragon told her to get down. Silvara grabbed Sophie and dropped Vorthanis. Breath weapon melted through the ship hull. The dragon could not fit inside, but he could destroy the walls. Metal screamed and tore. The AI core was exposed to space. Silvara finished the hack just as her air ran out. The code uploaded. The AI central ship went dark. Without commands, the machine fleet stopped fighting. They drifted in. Space. silent and harmless. Vorthanis grabbed Silvara and Sophie in his claws. He flew them to safety. Medical teams rushed to treat Sophie. She would recover, but the wound was serious. Silvara stayed with her until the doctors said she was stable. Then Silvara went to find Katie. The human ambassador was coordinating cleanup efforts. When she saw Silvara, she ran to her. They held each other without speaking. Katie said she was terrified. Silvara said she was too, but they did it. Together with their peoples, they stopped the threat. The aftermath took months to sort out. The machine ships were studied and then dismantled. Experts learned much about the old corrupted ones, enough to confirm they were truly extinct. Only their technology remained. Katie proposed using the knowledge to build better defenses. Both peoples agreed. A year after the machine wore life, returned to normal. Katie stood in the garden on New Horizons station. She tended the crystal flowers that now grew there. Silvara had given her cuttings from her last flower. With care, Katie helped them bloom. The flowers sang their soft song. Other flowers answered from pots around the garden. Humans and Ethel-Dore grew them together. Silvara arrived as the sun set. She often visited without announcement now. They were beyond formal protocols. Katie smiled when she saw her friend Silvara carried a data pad. She showed Katie reports of another possible Ethel-Dore enclave. This one in a very distant system. Katie said they should organize an expedition. Silvara agreed. Then she said something that surprised Katie. She wanted Katie to come with her, leave the station for a few months and explore. Katie hesitated. She had responsibilities. But Silvara pointed out that others could handle things. Katie had trained good people. She deserved a break. Katie laughed and agreed. They planned the journey over tea. Vorthanis would carry them. They would visit distant stars, meet new people, maybe find more survivors. It would be an adventure. As they talked, Katie realized how much had changed. 5 years ago, she was a captain who stumbled into first contact. Now she was an ambassador and friend to an alien queen. She helped prevent a war, then helped win one. But most importantly, she helped two peoples find peace. Silvara seemed to read her thoughts. The queen said, Katie saved more than her life. She saved her from becoming the very thing she hated. Katie said Silvara saved herself. She just reminded her who she wanted to be. They sat together as stars appeared. Two women from different worlds, bonded by shared trials. The galaxy was vast and often dangerous, but it was also full of possibility. As long as people chose hope over hate, understanding over fear, they could build something beautiful. Vorthanis landed in the garden. His dark, scarred scales shimmered in the starlight. The dragon lowered his head for them to climb on. Katie hesitated. She had never ridden a dragon before that desperate flight. 5 years ago, Silvara offered her hand. Together they climbed onto Vorthanis' back. The dragon spread his wings. He launched into space. Katie held tight as they flew among the stars. Below them, the joint fleet patrolled peacefully. Human and Ethel-Dore ships, side by side. She thought about everything that led to this moment, all the choices made in fear, and all the choices made in courage. She thought about the future. There would be more challenges, more misunderstandings, more threats, but they would face them together, not as enemies, but as friends, as partners, as family chosen across the stars. Vorthanis roared with joy. The sound echoed through space, a song of survival and hope. Katie laughed. Silvara joined her. Together, they flew into tomorrow. Silvara looked up at Katie with confused eyes. She whispered a question that had no answer yet. Why did she save this human? She hated humans. They were her enemy. Yet her body moved to protect one. Vorthanis' voice rumbled in Silvara's mind. The dragon had sensed what his bonded queen could not admit. This human. Katie had genuine empathy. Her soul rang with true kindness. In that moment of choice, Silvara chose to protect rather than destroy. Something long buried in the queen heart had awakened. For the first time in 3,000 years, Silvara began to weep.